everybody, welcome to my channel Revd Ruth's Creativity. I'm Ruth and today I'd like to share with you how I made this rose petal bowl using resin and rose petals I dried from my garden. Welcome if it's your first time and welcome back if you've seen my other videos already. You may have seen that I have posted a petal bowl using different flower petals. This time it's a slightly different technique. I found before the edges were slightly creasing up, which I wasn't happy with, so I've done it differently this time. So have a watch, let me know what you think. I love hearing what you think in the comments. Click that like button, and if you could subscribe, it really helps me share my video, get others to see my videos too. Thanks for watching. To begin with, I tint my resin because I don't want the colour to fade on the petals, but also I don't want the resin to yellow over time. I want it to keep its colour. So you don't need very much resin at all for this project. What you do need is lots of patience, but hardly any resin. As you can see, I've just got some. It's easier if you lay it into a plate and then you can soak the petals in the resin. So you need to make sure that your petals are very dry and that they've been sealed. I used hairspray to seal these ones, and then each petal must be coated completely in resin on both sides, and sometimes you get pockets where there's air and the resin hasn't gone in. Make sure you get those all covered. And what you'll also need to do is to drain the resin off the petals. So you completely coat them, and then I place them on the side of the plate to drain off any excess resin. And then the beauty of the petal comes through when you create the bowl. Otherwise, all you'll see is resin. So I leave them on the side, and excess resin will drip from them slowly. And I'm just showing you this part in real time so you can see how I do it. And then once we get further on, I'll speed it up for you so you don't get bored watching me coating the petals in resin. I've lined the dish that I'm going to use, the bowl. That's just with cling film or Glad wrap. It's also known as cling wrap. Something that you know is not gonna stick to the resin, that you'll be able to remove it afterwards, and it's thin enough to take the shape of the bowl. Here we go. I've speeded this bit up for you so that you don't get bored watching me just coating petals. You can do this with any size bowl. Obviously, the larger the bowl, the more patience you'll need and the more time. I like these small ones. They seem to suit the smaller flower petals better. You can see on the plate there where the resin has drained from those first petals that I did. And then we can begin to lay them into the mould. So I start off in the centre and I place them all side by side, making sure the tips of the petals are all touching in the centre. You don't need the actual petal leaves to overlap though. As long as they're just touching, the resin will harden and seal them together. Making sure I pick out the right petals to fill the right gaps. And don't forget to try and use the petals that you coated in resin first. Use those ones first because they'll have had time to have the excess resin taken off them. And work your way around the plate. So I've done my first layer. Next, I then put more petals around those ones, working my way up the mould, up the bowl. I've got tweezers in one hand, and the white tool is a cheap plastic painting tool that I bought from a shop called The Works in the UK. And I find they work really well with resin. So on that layer, I'm just spacing them out, making sure they lay flat how I want them. and then I'm going to fill in the gaps between the petals, creating a pattern as I work my way round in circles and then moving up to the next circle once I've completed one. You can see I'm just slowly building it up. And what I'm doing is I'm overlapping the very tip of the petal to the petal below it, but only just. You don't need to overlap them very much at all. And then just finding the right petals to fill that last gap. I'm going to go with 2 smaller ones. I decided rather than a larger petal. And that's the next row done. Filling in that gap there. And starting on the next row of petals. And you can do this with any petals. I find the smaller flower petals suit the smaller bowls. I have dried some larger rose petals which I'd like to do a larger bowl with, but I haven't done that yet. But I think that will be really pretty too. But the delicate nature of the petals does suit the smaller size. I find this method better. The first ones I created, I formed flat and then put them into the bowl mould, but I found the top edges were creasing, so this is a much better method, and the petals stay where they need to. They don't slip down, which is what I was worried about initially. And you can go as far, make the bowl as big and as far up the edges as you like. So you get the idea, and you really don't need much resin at all because it drains from them. You just scoop it all together and coat the rest of them. What you'll find as you leave the bowl to dry once you've finished it and let the resin cure is the resin on the top edge of the leaves will run down, and you'll find that you'll get a little pool in the bottom of the bowl, but that's actually quite nice. It gives it its sturdiness and creates a nice light edge. So that's why you don't want too much resin on your petals, because it will drain down to the center of the bowl, and it can spoil it if you have too much resin. So I'm scraping up the last bits just to fill that last gap. So leave that to cure overnight, and this is the next morning. So you take the petals out of the bowl, but what you'll find is that it is still not firm. It will need curing for longer. So you can take the cling film off the back, but do be careful because it can rip the petals. Just very gently. Sometimes I use the tweezers for this if it's got caught in a particular petal, but I didn't need to for this one. And then I'll show you in a minute just how flexible it is still. See, the edges there are still bendy, so it needs longer for the resin to fully cure. So I put it back into the bowl just to make it sure it keeps its shape. And there we have the finished mini rose petal resin decorative bowl. I hope you liked watching, and do come back and see my other videos.